Hi and welcome to the show. Behind every great mind is a teacher who believed in them. My guest today has spent the past 30 years fostering the minds of many great people on this continent. She started off as a math teacher and is a passionate proponent of girls' access to education on the continent. She worked in the Ministry of Education in her home country of Zambia. She was the Zambian National Coordinator for Oxfam, and she is now the Executive Director for the Forum of African Women Educators. Hendrina Doroba, welcome to The Scoop. Hendrina, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your time. Tell me a little bit about growing up, Hendrina. Early days, first memories of Zambia. What do you remember?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Great memories, very interesting one. I come from a very humble background. I come from a family of 10.
Wow. Girls. So you have 9 siblings.
9 siblings. And unfortunately, at the time I was getting into school, my mother and father divorced. So I was one of those that experienced that separation at the time of going to school.
This is primary school
or high school?
Primary school. Wow. So you were 6, 7 years old at this time?
Yes, I was actually 6 years old. And I was just about to start school. And my mother couldn't leave me with my father, so I had to go with my mother to the village and so on. But she still enrolled me in a school where we had to walk. It was a weekly boarding. So we had to walk about 20 kilometers to get there, and we stay in for 5 days, and then we walk back. And I remember my grandmother waiting by the roadside, just making sure.
Were all your siblings together, or did some of them stay with your dad?
No, almost everybody stayed with my dad except me and my elder sister.
Okay. Why was that?
I think it's because we're the youngest in the group, and so my mother didn't feel safe to leave them with them.
So you were the baby of the group?
I was the baby, not the smallest, the second smallest.
The second smallest, okay. Okay.
And so she took us to her mother, who was my grandmother, and then she left. So she left my elder sister and myself and went with the small baby. And I had to continue going to school. Yeah.
And your dad was a huge influence in your life. But that would have been later on. How often did you see him once you moved?
Very interesting. They divorced when I was getting into school, and they reconciled when I was finishing school. So for me, that is the greatest achievement in my life. I didn't enjoy
watching them both get back together.
And just calling mom and dad in the same house was very interesting. But it was short-lived, unfortunately.
Tell me a little bit about, what did your dad do? What was his profession?
My father was a teacher.
So he was a teacher in the same school that you
No,
went
in
to?
A different school. Where they divorced is about 3 hours drive to where we were staying, my mother's village. And so he was in a different school, and then he moved. He was a head teacher of a school, and then he was promoted. By the time of his death, he was the boarding master of a teacher training college.
What did you want to be when you were a child? You had dreams and ambitions, obviously.
Yeah.
What was your first, all of us want to be pilots or astronauts or scientists. What did you want to be?
I think for me, I wanted to be a soldier.
Really?
A soldier.
But why?
I'm not sure why, but I think I was coming from a background where I had known very little about what soldiers do and all that. And then when I got into primary school, we used to have all these essays writing about the Zambian army and what role they play and how they protect the country. And I remember at that time there was instability in our neighboring country. And my father always used to talk about it, to say, you have to be sovereign to your country, you have to do this, you need to protect your country.
Was he ever in the army?
No.
He never fought or anything?
No, he never fought. But he was very passionate about peace, and he didn't like fighting. And so he was a peacemaker.
And when did that change? When did reality set in?
I think that grew up very strong, by the way, to the point that I started negotiating with my father, and my father kept saying, well, you do what you like. If you want to be in the army, go ahead. And so even when I was at school, I joined, there's a cadet force, more like a petty army within the school.
Right.
I did that. And
were there other girls that were with you?
A few other girls were there, and then I got promoted and got all different kinds of ranks. I was actually commissioned as a cadet officer.
Really? Wow.
And I was getting ready to join the army. But unfortunately, I told you my father reconciled with my mother when I was just finishing. And unfortunately, that same year, towards the end, he passed on. And I was just about to write the exams. From that moment, everything just changed.
What, was he ill?
He had a stroke. He had a stroke. And
but no symptoms before that? Didn't know that he was...
Nothing. And I remember that day I was coming from school. Then I just found him lying, and I thought he was in pain or something, but he was already gone. So when I called my mother...
You found him?
Yeah, I found him. And I called my mother. I said, I don't know what's happening to Daddy, but something is wrong. My mother said, oh, he just passed. We've just been talking to him just a few minutes ago. And then I said, no, but there's something wrong. And they were like, no, it can't be. He's just passed through. He has gone back to the office. So nobody believed until I had to drag my mother. I said, something is wrong. So my mother came and said, oh, no. Then we called up people. When I was talking to my sisters and telling them, oh, my father has died, they were like, no. I talked to him last night. He didn't complain of anything, and so on. So it was very shocking for all of us.
And what does that do to a now 16, 17-year-old girl who was very close to her dad and has to sit exams?
I was very disappointed. And I think everybody, I didn't like the way people now started looking at me, because I was Daddy's tomboy. And so everybody was wondering and looking at me from different sides and so on. So I had to just get up the courage, and I said, okay, I need to handle this, and I need to write the exams, because that was a week before my exam. So it was tough. So
let's go from passing your exams, which you did, obviously, to getting the scholarship to go to Australia. How difficult was it? Had you ever traveled outside of Zambia before this?
No, very interesting. So what happened is, when I finished my secondary school, we had to go for compulsory national service at the time. So I went for military training. Of course, I enjoyed that.
So you got your offer, you got your soldier
got the opportunity. Yeah. So I went for that, and I came back, and then I was accepted to go to teacher training college as my first choice, and I accepted. And everybody was like, "But with your results, why do you want to go to teacher training?" and so on. But one of the challenges I had was that when my father died, my mother was going through a lot of difficulties because of that transition process. And I didn't have enough support to go to university. So I opted, the whole idea was for me to get a job, get trained, and go out and start teaching. So I went for teacher training college. I did 3 years. I finished, and then I graduated. And I graduated very young, by the way.
Well, how old were you when you graduated?
I was about getting to 20. I had just graduated celebrated my 19th birthday.
We'll be right back with Hendrina Doroba. Stay with me. Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Hendrina Doroba. Hendrina, before the break we were talking about, finishing your teacher's training college, but at a very young age.
Yeah.
Had you ever traveled overseas? No. Had you ever left Zambia?
No, I had not.
So what made you apply for a scholarship?
What happened was that, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey to the school where I was, where I started teaching. When I graduated, I was posted to a boys' school, to go and teach at a boys' school. And when I arrived there, the headmaster just looked at me and said, "You're not coming to teach my boys." And I'm like, "Oh yes, I'm a qualified teacher." Yeah. And he said, no, I'm taking you back to the ministry. They need to find you another school. I have big boys here, and I'm not going to tolerate that. And I thought he was joking. So I went back to the ministry, and I said, this is what has happened. And the minister said, oh, I just had a head teacher from another school. They are looking for a maths teacher. Would you be interested to teach girls? I said, of course. And that's how I got on to go to a girls' school. So when I got to the school, I was young. Yeah. The people I was teaching were almost my age. And interestingly, I met one of them just two weeks ago. Okay. Was one of my first students. I went in, and they were like, we cannot be taught by a fellow girl like ours and mathematics. And they started walking out. Yeah. And I'm like, you guys, why are you walking out? I said, no, we can't. I mean, this is a very serious subject. We can't be taught by a girl. But a few remained. So I started engaging and chatting, and I was actually teaching mathematics from a very practical perspective.
Did the others come back?
They did. Yeah. By the end of the term, everybody came back. And like I told you, I met one who is at the African Union just 2 weeks ago at the summit. And she looked at me and said, I can never forget you. This was my teacher, and everybody looked
that
at me.
That must be very heartwarming.
Yeah,
it must be quite amazing for you to see.
I was so excited.
Where these young girls that you helped shape.
And not doing anything else but she's an accountant.
So it's still in the field.
Still in the field of mathematics. So I was very excited.
And so getting the scholarship, how did you apply for the scholarship to go to
So for the
Australia?
scholarship, I went to that, it was a rural school, and then we got a notice from the newspaper saying, oh, they are looking for teachers of mathematics. Female teachers are encouraged to apply. And I remember I was in the staff room and I was telling my colleagues, oh, this was my scholarship, so I'm going to apply. Yeah. And everybody was like, you're a joker. Yeah. So I sat in, applied, and I was called for interview. I went in for the first interview, second interview, before you knew it, I was selected.
And how was it? What was the first experience? What was your first impression of landing in, was it Melbourne or Sydney or Perth?
Melbourne.
In Melbourne.
It's Perth, we just passed, Brisbane.
So
we just
you
passed
get off in Melbourne, what did you think? Australia is very much like Africa.
Yeah.
In terms of climate and things like that.
I think there was more excitement than anything. I got off in Melbourne and we were given this tour and we were going by the river and so on. And we're given, it was a very prestigious scholarship, by the way. It was by the mines and it fully furnished. The first few weeks we're given this posh, nice apartment. I'm like, it can be me. So it was very exciting, and I toured Australia like anything.
Really? You went everywhere?
I went everywhere. I went in caravans. Yeah. I did all kinds of things. And the good bit is I was also doing very well in school. I was doing very well in school. So
how long was that experience then?
3 years.
That was the full course?
Yes, 3 years full course. Before I left, I had started doing my my degree program.
Right.
And because I'd done my diploma program, so they accredited that. And what that meant, actually I could have completed the degree program in 2 years, and then they gave me 1 year where I did my postgrad in mathematics, because the scholarship was for 3 years.
But the plan was always to come back to Zambia.
Oh,
that was always the plan, to come back home, experience all these places,
and
but come back home.
And they couldn't believe, when I told my colleagues that I'm going back, they just said no.
Because you could have got a job easily in Australia.
Oh yeah, they wanted actually to offer me a master's program, full scholarship. And I said, no, I'm going back. What's so special? I said, no, I have to go back. And they couldn't understand that.
So coming back home.
Yeah.
What do you do then? You can't go back to that same college. You have obviously got these wonderful qualifications. You've got a master's.
Yeah.
What are the job opportunities here?
After that, in fact, a few months later, I was offered to be the inspector of schools for mathematics. And I turned it down.
For the whole country?
For the region.
For the region.
The southern region.
Right.
And I said no. And
you wanted to teach?
Yeah, I wanted to teach. Yeah. I said no. That I'm not going to inspect. I want to change what is happening in the classroom. And so the inspector couldn't believe and couldn't just understand why. But I told him, I just don't want to teach. I want to be part of the team. So when the opportunity for teaching teachers on how to teach mathematics came in as an in-service program, I said, that's where I want to go. So I got that. I went for interviews and I got it. And I did a lot of work around in-service provision, helping teachers on how to teach mathematics from a gender perspective and making it easier, simple, and supportive of the students for quite some time.
You always seem to know exactly what you wanted to do and the path you wanted to follow. You were quite sure of where you wanted to be, where you didn't want to be. If young people were to come to you for advice now, and say, Hendrina, tell me, what should I study? What is the advice you would give them?
I think, first of all, you need to recognize what are some of the things that you are passionate about, and what are the principles behind that. And when I say being passionate, it doesn't mean because I've seen my friend X is doing that and I want to go that direction. There are certain things that you want to do because you feel you want to do them. And that's what happened to me. And if a girl or anybody came to me asking for advice, I would want to know and appreciate what is their passion. What are some of the things that they like doing, which they appreciate? And I like the focus of the African Union in as far as promoting agriculture and also promoting youth engagement in agriculture. I think for me that's the way to go. We need to make the agriculture sector very attractive. And for the women, I don't want to see the women just in the
In the field.
In the field. I
Yeah.
want to see entrepreneurs coming out, processing, adding value to the products that are coming out. And that's my desire.
We'll be right back with Hendrina Doroba. Stay with me. We have The Scoop on Uber, and it's a first free ride of up to 500 Kenya shillings if you use the promotional code The Scoop. To climb aboard, simply download the free Uber application for your iPhone, Android, or Windows phone. Uber and The Scoop, keeping Africa moving. Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Hendrina Doroba. Hendrina, the move from, I mean, you're passionate about education. That's been obvious throughout this whole discussion. But what attracted you to going to the NGO field?
Yeah.
Where did you feel that you could, where was that interest coming from? Where did you feel you could make a difference in that way?
Yeah. It all started, I was working with Ministry of Education. And then I realized that there were certain things that were not moving, which needed a little push from outside, which I couldn't change in the inside. And when the opportunity to coordinate a capacity building of civil society that are working and supporting the ministries of education, I thought that was an opportunity. I said, wow, so this is something that I could do. Before then, I was working with ministry. We were trying to support the decentralization process and improving the quality of learning and so on. And there was a lot of push and back and push and back, and I felt a little bit frustrated. At that time, I was working for Irish Aid, as working within the setup of a donor and all that. You could only do so much. So when the opportunity to support civil society came in, I said, this could be an opportunity for me to, to move on. And at that time, I had just lost my husband. There was also an issue of settling in. He was a very jovial, outgoing kind of a person. I couldn't fit in his shoes. So when I remained alone in that city, I really wanted to get out, because everywhere I moved, it's like everybody's, oh, where's he? And what's happening?
What happened again?
Because he died a sudden death.
How old was he?
He was about 48.
So very young man.
He was very young.
Yeah. And what happened? Again, strokes?
No, he had meningitis. And by the time they confirmed that it was meningitis, it was too late. And unfortunately, when he got that attack, I was not home. I was in Dublin for some meeting. On my way back, that's when I was told, he's in intensive care and so on. By the time I got there, he actually improved for a day, I guess for my sake. And then after that, when they were about to do their puncture thing, he didn't.
And how does one catch meningitis? I mean, it's easy to catch it, or
we didn't understand it very well, but I think he had some malaria which was not properly managed, because he was doing a lot of field work where he was working, and it is a malaria-prone area. And I think they used to treat him for malaria without knowing that it had actually affected the spine.
And is this when you left the country?
No, that's when I left Irish Aid and I went to Oxfam. That's when the opportunity now for supporting civil society came in. And so I joined, and I enjoyed what I was doing. Yeah.
And this then
saw me to come to
FAWE.
FAWE.
And now this is again where your heart is.
Interesting, yeah. When I was working for the Oxfam, I remember one of my colleagues, again, people see something in the paper and they tell you, Hendrina, something that looks like your job. Please look at it. I'm like, and then I said, okay, I'll look at it. Second day, but closing date is. I said, okay. So I looked at it and it was good. So I said, okay, I'm going to apply. And I got it. When I told my boss I'm moving, he couldn't believe it.
You must have made quite an impression at Oxfam.
Yeah, he just said, no, Hendrina, you can't go.
And that was the move to Kenya. I mean, the head office is in Kenya for FAWE.
That was and I was not working for FAWE at the time.
Yeah.
But because it was issues to do with girls and it was to do with capacity building of teachers, I said, yeah, that's where I want to go.
This segues into leadership. It's a question of a lot of these things need leadership.
Yeah.
We seem to not have the right political leadership on this continent. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you see the next generation of leaders coming from? When you look around, you interact now with heads of government, heads of state, you go to AU summits, you're in the circle of the doers and the shakers. Where do you see the problem of leadership, and how do we address it where you have 70, 60, 70, 80-year-old men, not so many women, vying for presidential power, when maybe there's 70% of our population that is young and has no connection to these people, that works on new technology, that understands and gets information in a different way. How do you see us navigating this?
I'm hopeful that we can strengthen our succession plans, because I think that's where the problem is. The old are holding on to the jobs, and the young are too anxious to get, and so they don't have the patience and they don't build the skills required to be able to take up those positions. And then there's a disconnect between the upcoming leaders and those that are already in position. So if only we can strengthen the mentorship and succession plan, I think that would help. Shadowing and supporting, pulling up the young ones coming. But the young ones also should not be in a hurry, because sometimes they are too excited. They don't take time to understand and appreciate where they are and what they can do and what they cannot do. But also the elderly also are in a position that they know it all, and so they need to move on without recognizing that the environment in which they are working has changed. That may require new skills, technologies taking up, and so on. So bridging that gap and making sure that this mentorship actually is put into action.
Going back to women in power, we have not even a handful of women presidents on this continent. Why?
Because the environment doesn't seem to create that enabling policies and also support for the women to take up those positions. Talk about leadership at that high level, but also leadership at school level. I mean, the kind of environment that we go through, that I went through as a student, if I didn't persevere, I don't think I could have finished. So it's about creating an enabling environment that actually recognizes and appreciates both sexes as human beings and who have the potential and the capacity. And this is where my father used to tell me to say, you know what, if you open that brain of yours and you look at the brain of your brother, there's no difference. So you can do and
brothers
everybody
might
else.
Be smaller.
Yeah, you can do it and everybody else can do it. So unless we get that sense even from our leadership to look at me as a woman, as a person who has the potential to be able to make a contribution, we will not reach there. Secondly, when you look at the platform where this is happening, are we creating enabling environment? The fact that I want to go in a position of leadership does not stop me from being a woman. I'll still be a woman. And I'm not saying I want to be a man. I'm simply saying give me an opportunity so that I can show my potential, so that I can show my ability. But you are not going to draw away my womanhood. I'm a woman and I'm proud to be a woman.
Hendrina, you're still a young lady. You've had an amazing journey, but what's the future? What's next for you with FAWE, after FAWE?
I'm seeing myself going back and supporting the women out there. I'm still into my agriculture passion and more of engaging and supporting women to add value to the produce that they bring out. To
and education will obviously always be close
and
to
the
your
way
heart.
I'm planning to do that is putting up a technological center where these women from the village, and I'm not talking of graduates, I'm talking of those that have minimum qualification are coming in to do some work that will help them either improve their livelihood in one or the other from the agriculture perspective. And I'm talking improving on the way they dry their organic foods, and the way they process, they package, and all that kind of thing. My desire is I want the women to move away from being laborers in the farm to being entrepreneurs.
Hendrina, the show's called The Scoop. I asked my guests to tell me something about them that hopefully nobody in the world knows. So if your sons and daughter are watching this and they look at it and say, I didn't know that about Mama, what would your scoop be?
That nobody else knows.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, actually. I sleep less hours and pretend like I've slept for a long time. That's one thing. I don't know how to explain this. I think there's much as people think I support others, but the degree to which I do that, very few know, if at all. So I think being selflessness, if I may use that word, yeah.
And that's the sleepless, selfless scoop with Hendrina Doroba. Join me again next week when I'll be talking to yet another great African personality. From me and the entire team of The Scoop from Nairobi, Kenya, thanks for watching. Hendrina, thank you so much. Asante sana, as they say here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having
everything.
me.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your wonderful story. What an amazing life you've had.
Thank you. I appreciate it.